Hold up, one second. What's the? And we're live.
And we're live. Welcome back.
And we're back.
Hey, we got a serious upgrade.
Is this like Cinderella?
Hey, we got a serious upgrade in this thing right here.
Are we actually live?
Yeah, we're live.
See,
Turn
look,
it down.
look, so we can fade it out. Look.
If you guys will
professional,
notice,
Oh, that's
man.
nice.
That's professional.
if you guys will notice, we have a extra character in the
Inaugural
room
guest.
tonight, and we have some music playing, which is pretty sick. So this guy's name right here is Brannon Shortt. His rap name is B Short with 2 T's. Isn't that important, right?
That's how you spell my last
That's how you
name.
spell his last name.
So you have to have the
You
double
gotta
T.
make sure it's B Short with 2 T's,
Yeah,
or he's gonna get
Brandon
mad.
with a D.
No.
Short,
I
get out of here.
thought it was Brennan. I thought it was Brennan.
Brandon.
It's been so many things over the years.
No, this is B Short. Dude we grew up with, played ball with growing up. He's from Davie. Most of you guys watching will know if our mothers still watch.
You gotta stop saying that. You had a 17,000 view Instagram reel.
Hey, now it's actually our 3 mothers.
Yeah.
Hey, it is. You can say our 3 mothers.
Living in California,
California.
pastor, senior pastor,
Yep.
senior pastor, rapper,
Rapper.
my favorite, candle maker. On the board of directors of multiple different nonprofits in California, correct? Or where are those at?
All in California.
And a great dude. And we're gonna dive into some of the
And he was the speed pitch softball MVP last year.
Was 2 years ago, pre-COVID, in the final full adult softball season I played. MVP. Speed pitch winner.
MVP.
What a specimen.
Speed pitch and slow pitch, though?
Yeah, well, it was literally you would line up at shortstop and throw the ball. It was like a scout day. You have a softball, they got a gun, and you're throwing to first base
As
as hard as you can throw. Throw, hop, everything.
How hard was that last
The
year?
first number on my life was an 8
That's pretty good.
with a softball.
That's pretty good.
Still got it.
A lot better than I
still,
could do.
Still got it.
We're gonna dive into
Everything.
a lot tonight.
Yeah.
We want to learn from you, Be Short, and kind of what God's doing in your life. But I think first, I just want people watching to just figure out kind of who you are. Can you give us like a summary, like where you're at in life right now, where you're living, what you're doing? I know that's a lot. It could be a lot, but just give us a short answer.
R12 Nation. Hi. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
There it is. That's
Thanks
what
for
I need.
being here.
He's already got good camera.
Well,
That's
believe it
what
or
he-
not, I've never done this before.
Yeah, right. You never talking to a mic before, huh?
Never talking
Yeah.
to a mic, never been on a podcast.
But tell us where you're living. Tell us where you're living.
I will not tell you where I'm living, but
Not
I will.
exact
No,
street.
listen, I'm gonna-
Address.
I know the
please.
street.
I'm
I
gonna-
know the street. I can tell the street.
You can tell the street, but before I say what I'm doing, where I am,
Okay, tell us.
I haven't seen some of you in multiple years.
True.
So I want to start R12 Nation by saying I am so radically proud of you guys.
Yeah.
Not in some like patronizing way, but in like we actually grew up together.
Yeah.
And you guys we're all in different stages of life, living in different places, and y'all are starting this, and people are watching and tuning in and DMing you questions and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So at like a full heart, soul sincerity, I am so proud y'all are doing this.
Yeah, we appreciate that coming from you. Yeah.
So, as somebody that's beyond honored, am I the first guest?
Hey,
are.
also,
Inaugural.
my
first guest.
Yep.
Yeah, but
Do the noise.
Anything.
Do the noise.
Yeah, I got it right.
First
Hey, and
guest.
This has
music-
really gone up another level with this.
And that music that was playing at the beginning, that's actually his music, and we're gonna play more of that.
Literally, that's like.
But we're gonna play more of his music going forward and hear the stories behind it, kind of how it happened. But yeah, tell us.
So, been in California. This is nuts to say. I think you guys will find this crazy. Been in California. June will be 9 years.
Jeez.
So, almost a decade in California. Dude,
That is crazy.
be married for 9 years in June. Casey, my wife, greatest person who ever lived. Like,
That's right.
is not a perfect human, but I tell Jeremy and other people this, like, Casey's the most compassionate person I've ever met in my life. Child psychologist, works with kids who've experienced trauma, PhD, double masters, got an MDiv, got more degrees than a Fahrenheit thermometer. So I locked it down at 21. So here we are. I wouldn't recommend that, by the way. That's a hard life. You got a lot growing up to do. But we're in California, Sacramento now. So we were
Sacramento.
in LA the first, 5 years. Been in Sacramento the last 3.
Go River Cats.
Go River Cats. the AAA affiliate of the San Francisco Giants, former home of Jeremy.
Walker.
And that's kind of how we got reconnected.
Yeah.
Which I'm so thankful for.
Oh,
that
that
I was playing there and that you just happened to be there for us to have friends out there.
Oh, dude. It meant a
would
world
be-
to me because you guys are newly married. I've
Yeah.
got a picture of the three of us sitting on a lawn chair together.
From the same chair?
On the same chair.
That's back
You
where-
heard that right, R12 Nation.
That's back
Who's on the
where
bottom?
It was probably like between
we're-
games.
I think
on like
it's
a Saturday.
Jacob.
we were a little bit smaller back then.
And this was
Yeah.
Davey Storm era.
That's way back.
jeez.
that is way back.
Me and Jacob actually played Little League together on Jeff Shore's fall ball
That was
team.
way back.
That's like 7, 8 years.
You want to talk about a goofball? 9-year-old Brannon Shortt.
my man looked like a goofball too.
Dude, yeah. My ears were the same size as they are now. So what's nuts is like if there was enough wind, you could get elevated just off the.
Hey,
flap
they
of
can't
those
even see
things.
your ears right now, bro. So we're good.
Yeah, I'm not gonna bring it up.
They look nice. They look nice now.
But in Sacramento, the last 3 years, one of the lead pastors at Bayside Church. We got several different churches within the area, and then like you said, nonprofit work, education advocate, seminary,
Yeah.
married, hip hop, a lot of fun stuff. That's
What,
where we're at right now.
I want to talk about why you decided to move to California.
Yeah.
'Cause
How,
you-
how you got there?
Yeah.
You've told me the story about. Well, okay, so you played ball in college.
Yep, played college. That was the only way I got to college. So, like, unlike Jacob, who had a 6.3
He
GPA.
never made a B until his freshman year of college.
So let's put it this way: I had a 4.0 as a junior and a senior, and graduated with a 2.6. So that's a good hole to start.
That pulled it up.
Yeah, those 2 4s really pulled me up
Hey,
into
at
the
least you got
stratosphere.
it going when you need to get it going.
That's right.
Well,
Turned it
was-
on.
I did turn it on, but I still Calvary. I graduated Calvary, transferred from Davie. But what was nuts is our classes were so small, right? Like our graduating classes, that I still finished second to last. So listen,
Out of
put
the
put
That's not fair though.
put that on my resume.
You were there with some brilliant
you
people.
were there with
though.
some people that were like,
Scott Morgan's going to Princeton.
Yeah, like-
yeah. Listen, okay, late bloomer. Okay, here we are. So I start this ministry in college with a couple of buddies on our baseball team.
they played with you.
Yeah, because
yeah.
you guys played at a Christian school.
Yeah.
And you quickly find out playing at a Christian university
Doesn't mean anything.
nobody went there because they just wanted to passionately worship Christ, or at least there was maybe a few of them.
Yeah.
But we had everything on our team. We had Memphis Crip gang members, Latin King drug dealers. Like we
Yeah.
had all of this on our team. And my thought was, man, we're being required to go to chapel. My guys are skipping. Nobody's really even spiritually interested. That's like
Yeah.
the landscape I was seeing was there's no interest even in this. It's like living my life kind of at a disregard for anything, trying to be a good person, and yet that's it.
Yeah.
So we start this thing where once a month we're doing a big gathering. We're doing small groups every week, and I get an email from a pastor out in California saying, I've heard of the ministry going on your campus, which is
Right.
crazy because we were in this little bitty Christian liberal art 4-year school in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And he says, I've heard of the ministry going on campus. Would you like to at least apply to be our intern for the year
Yeah.
or for the summer?
In California.
In California at a church that had made a lot of influence on like the global landscape of the church.
Right.
Was this freshman year of college or?
Freshman year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And come to find out, one of our soccer players who had started coming to the thing we were doing on campus was the executive pastor of this very large, influential church's son who had walked away from his faith
Wow.
and then started coming to the ministry that we had started. And he had told his dad, who had told the senior pastor, who then emailed me, and then I deleted the email because I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't super up to date on like what Christian culture was or
Yeah.
who the pastor, like that was never a thing for me.
Yeah.
So when I got it, I just deleted it because I saw it was in Lake Forest, California. So I delete the email.
And
Spam.
you're in Tennessee.
Spam.
Never have been to California.
Never had been to California.
Yeah.
Or maybe I did once as a kid. But I mean, like, I
But you-
never.
Imagine going.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
I'm like, it's so far away. So my ministry department head, I was studying theology at the school, and he said, what are you going to do with your summer? I said, I don't know. I got this email from this guy out in California, but I just deleted it. I'm not going to California. He goes, who was it? And I would go back to my trash folder,
Tell him the name.
find it, and I tell him the name. And I don't know what we can or can't say, but I'll say, like,
You can say his name.
well, I'll say
I mean,
that.
it's a well known like.
The name of the guy is the best-selling author in American history.
Yeah.
And he's prayed in 2 inaugural prayer presidents. He's like negotiated peace treaties in other countries. Been a cover of Time magazine. And I've deleted the email. And he goes, "No, seriously, who emailed you?" And I said, "No, seriously, that's who it's from. It's from the office. Like this person literally says it." And he goes, "Oh my gosh!" He sits me down. We rewrite an email apologizing for why he could go talk to Parliament one day and email me.
Yeah.
And I was so busy as a college student I couldn't email back for a month. So I apologize.
Too much work.
I still get the internship, global church planting. That summer we launched in Berlin, Manila, Philippines, Buenos Aires, and that's like the first connection to California. Yeah. But then Casey gets into the PhD program at Fuller.
Were you guys dating at the time?
We started dating sophomore year.
That was a long time ago.
Like prenatal.
Sophomore year of
Dating.
high school.
Yeah.
Prenatal
Sophomore year of
dating.
high school, and then freshman year of college, you get this opportunity, and she gets her opportunity.
You want me to tell you how the Casey thing happened?
in high
I
school?
remember when B Short was first talking to Casey, like
So-
before they were officially
Was he
dating.
nervous?
So Casey's on the volleyball team taking pictures in the library. So I immediately think, yo, that's where I should be.
With a bunch of
Yeah, all the girls are taking pictures in the library. And I'm new at the school, so I just walk in. And I would have hated young me, I think, now. This is the kids in the youth groups that we talk about. So I walk up to this whole team. I'm like, "Hi, Brannon Shortt. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you." I get to the end of the table, and Casey's sitting there. I shake her hand. I said, "Hi, my name's Brannon Shortt. It's nice to meet you." And she goes, "I'm Casey. I don't think we've met." And I looked Casey in the eyes, R12 Nation, and said the following words. "Listen, I know we've never met, because if we had, I would never forget."
Oh boy. He had that plan.
No, I didn't have a plan. And she looked at me, and I said, "So this one I'm thinking." I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "I'm thinking Friday night, 6 o'clock, me, you, dinner, movie." I didn't have a driver's license, but as you know, that didn't stop me in that time. So I said, "Me and you date," and she's like, "No." And she says no the next 10 months. 10 months later, she says yes to our first date. We never broke up. Went to separate colleges, got married out of college, and whatever. But she gets into her PhD program after college, and we know that we're going to spend our first married summer in Winston, and then we're going to fly out to California, and we did, with 4 suitcases, nowhere to live, and no job.
Ooh.
I would not
Across
recommend
the country.
it. But I knew I had some connections,
Yeah.
and I was praying that God would open a door in that space. But Casey had a start date for the program.
Yeah.
So we moved out, and we ended up living in somebody's guest bedroom that allowed us to stay there. No cars, 4 suitcases, no job.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
Isn't it crazy how you see God's, like, during it you can't see it, but then after you can just see
That's,
it. And
we kind of talked about that a couple of podcasts ago, right? Like more so with like struggles and trials and everything. But like it's crazy to see how God was working in your life. You had no idea.
No idea.
And Kirk mentioned it. What was it? I think it was youth or something last week. You can say it. I don't want to take your words, but he was like, of all
I don't remember
people,
what it was. I don't know what you're
of all
referring to.
people, like that of all people that turned out like you turned out, we wouldn't have. expected.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. No, so
Yeah.
like RC was like my closest like
Comparison.
comparison
Yeah.
to you, right?
Yeah.
Because like I knew RC's background, I knew where he had came from, and then he starts showing up at church, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what's this guy doing here, right?
Yeah.
And then I was just talking to you about it earlier
Yeah.
before the podcast, and I was like, I mean, it's just wild how God works in our lives.
Yeah.
Like, in just one encounter like him, it was just one person at the gym asking him to come to church,
Yeah.
and then everything like,
But I
changing
think
my
it's
life.
so cool to see for us looking at you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're older than me, but I also, dude, I remember when I was in like 6th grade, I thought you were the crap, bro. I thought you were the man.
Can we pause real quick?
I
and have
thought
you were
Jeremy.
the man.
I still think you
We
were
can
very,
clip that.
very
We
cool.
can clip that.
No, I need us to pause and get Jeremy to admit live on this show that we, especially, maybe Kirkland as well, we and Jacob were just closer in age. No, we were all, no, yes.
Yeah.
Can we just publicly admit that we were all better than Jeremy
I agree,
as younger kids?
but that's because y'all had age on me.
No,
Yeah,
that's because
bro.
we were better players.
Well,
Because you're 2 years older.
I
But
just
then
remembered.
Jeremy smoked us and made it to the major freaking leagues.
Well,
I remember Jeremy went and pitched one weekend, like in his age group.
yeah.
I think he threw a 6-inning shutout with like 16 strikeouts.
yeah, I was
He
like,
always
I
played
don't-
up with us.
I don't know if anyone even put it in play.
to your point, the teams that we played on, you guys were 1,000% better than me. 1,000%.
baseball, me,
Cut.
never.
Yeah.
Basketball, 8th grade,
Done.
year, I was better
Clip.
than Jeremy.
But
Dude,
dude,
eighth
I
grade,
still think
Kirk was a
I
beast.
still think
Yeah.
you're really cool. But would you admit that when we were that age, you weren't the best role model for us?
Yeah,
for
sure.
me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy to
100%.
see how God has used you and like changed your life.
Yes.
Over the course of 10, 15 years.
That's what I want. That's what I kind of want to ask. Like, at what point? Not so much like when you profess to be a Christian and like, you know, had salvation. Like, not that point. But when did like the switch flip and you're like, okay, I'm a Christian, but like now my life is changing. Like, I want to go pursue like studying theology, like into the ministry. Like, I want to give my life over to serving God. Like, walk me through like when that kind of happened.
Yeah, there's like 3 distinct moments. It's like Casey talks about, like, those are cemented in my brain that I remember those. One that I don't remember, and you guys may like feel the same way, and those watching in R12 Nation may feel the same way.
R12 Nation.
R12 Nation, #1 podcast in the world. Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you can find.
Thank
podcasts.
you, Cranky's Coffee.
Thank you, Cranky's. Literally, a lot of people raised in and around church aren't able to say, this is when I became a Christian. Because, like, at some level, we were raised in it. I think Jacob nailed that when he asked it, like, when did this become real for you? I had a moment when I was like 4 or 5 that I remember understanding it the best that my brain at the time could, what it meant for Jesus to live in my heart, this, like, very elementary understanding of sin, atonement. Somehow Jesus' cross means that he loves me, that. But then one night at and this is like, it sounds more dramatic than it was, but one night at a house party my freshman year, I am there.
Of high school.
Yeah, with a group of people. And my friend group wasn't that great either, but I loved them. And when I say not that great, I mean pretty bad influences.
Right.
But I loved them, and I have great compassion looking back on a couple of those stories, because 2 of the guys, I mean, we may end up talking about this, I don't know, but 2 of those guys that became drug dealers both had dads die in their middle school years and go through a couple different, like, parents attempting suicide. Like, I just, you can see the whole story once you're removed from it and grow a little bit. But I'm at that party that night. I'm trying to go this step, it's a step further than I've made a vow not to go with this girl. She says no because she's not going to get manipulated by a jock.
Right.
And I wouldn't have claimed at the time that's what I was doing. But I think looking back, right, I didn't have any like long-term plan with this girl. Like I was absolutely there hoping that was a hookup moment. But there was something about that culminated with my last 3 years of kind of like rebellious running the opposite direction.
Right.
Took some suspensions and some bad fights in those times. But there was something about that moment that, like, I had this, I was laying in a bed and had this, like, what am I doing? And
that's a song.
Yeah, I'm like, what am I doing in my life? What is happening?
Yeah.
So I walk outside the party, walk outside in this cul-de-sac, and start yelling at God. Just shouting and praying and saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where I've come from. Like, this is not the way I was raised, and yet I'm knee-deep in these different circles, and I don't know who I am. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who I could be. I don't know where I'm at. But I'd heard this one verse that grace abounds all the more, or depending on your translation, grace abounds in the midst of sin. I remember shouting and saying, if that's true and you love me despite the mess I have already made of my young life, then I'm in.
Yeah.
And I transferred to Calvary the next year. I have all the rough edges. But then by the time I'm like 17, I'm questioning, because I say this in an interview. I said this in an interview recently. Somebody said, what's your philosophy of ministry? And I said, 14-year-old Brannon would have said, I just want my boys to know Jesus. That's my philosophy of ministry. Like, the guys I'm running with, I just want them to know.
Yeah.
Not much for me has changed.
Yeah.
Like, that's still the purest philosophy I could give.
Yeah.
A couple, like, advanced degrees later, that would still be the purest way I could say it.
And honestly, for me, man, you saying that means so much more to me than if you were to tell, like, some theological answer. Because for me, I mean, maybe for you guys, it would mean, but for me, man, that's what I like to see, because that's you. That's you in the most basic form. You want everybody that knows you, that you love and that loves you, to know Jesus.
That's it. And
even people that you don't know. And I'm sure that, like,
yeah,
it's the same thing. But
so on the ministry side, what was cool was I'm wrestling with it. And I usually don't share this story. I don't think I've ever R12 Nation talked about this on a platform like this.
Yeah.
Because I think once you start talking about things that are like these really miraculous moments in your life, some people are like, oh man, praise God, look how he worked. And then other times it's like, well, why is God not showing up in sign form to me
Yeah.
at the point of all my decisions? And he's not done that for me. But when I'm 17 and really wrestling with this, I'm in a church service in Louisville, Clemens, and this guest pastor from Seattle's there. And he looks at me and makes deadpan eye contact with me mid-sermon. And I've still got some rough edges, so I'm kind of thinking, whatever you want to fill in the blank with is going on here. This cat's staring at me, we've never met. And then he looks at me and then looks back down and looks at me again and goes, quote, like, I'll never forget it. He goes, I'm not that guy. But like with all assurance, that kid. And he points at me, and now I'm ready to fight. I'm like, listen, I still got some cut in me. Let's roll. Let's go. And
Don't
he
you
goes,
call me out.
yeah, don't you call me out in front of these people. He goes, that kid right there has been struggling and wrestling if he's called in the ministry, and God wants to let him know it's yes.
That's wild.
And I don't share that story a lot. And it's not like that was the thing that held me in all the tough times. It was, I think, in the goodness of God's great kindness. That was the way to get through to a really thick-skulled teenage Brannon
Right.
in a way that I could understand.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen every time. It doesn't make any calling anymore.
Right.
That was what it took for me to hear.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I remember being like, speaking with our teachers at Calvary and being like, I don't know how to know.
Yeah.
I
How
think
do you,
this
how
is
do you
where
know?
I'm going, but I don't know how to know. And now I think we know a lot more, or I know a lot more on like what the Bible would say about discerning steps. But then I didn't.
Yeah.
So God spoke in a way I could understand.
So, because you're going to be a full-time youth pastor coming up now.
Dang it.
Wrong one.
Which one? The wrong one? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one, the yellow one.
And like,
Gosh, that was tough.
Wait, what was it?
You're going to be a full-time youth pastor. Wow. I'm so sorry. I thought
But
for sure
no.
that was the right one.
I think it's cool
It's
because,
Should be
like,
good.
you've been in the ministry for how long?
I mean, yeah, almost a
Almost a
decade.
decade.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
9
you've
years
seen
full-time.
this stuff that is hard for
Yeah.
somebody in your shoes, and I think you just starting, and you've been in the youth.
Yeah.
Both of you guys have been in the youth, and we were just talking about like kind of the stuff that's
Difficult.
tough in what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But what was your moment? You've told me a little bit. I know
Yeah.
Kirk and
I
you
would
kind of
love to know the
shared, but
answer.
I like
Yeah.
for you to kind of tell. Be sure about that.
Well, dude, what's kind of crazy is, man, Brandon, I remember you called me, bro. It was
Yes.
it was at least
tell the story?
it was at least like 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago. No, probably like 6 years ago.
It was the week. I thought it was, yeah.
Bro, it was like
it was
midnight. It was
Yeah.
midnight. Me and Bree laying in bed. I'm like, Brannon Shortt. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, what on earth is he calling me for? I'm
Why is
like,
he FaceTiming me when
Yeah.
I'm in bed with my wife?
yeah. Like, I answered. I'm like, yo, Brandon, what's up, man? Like, and I'm like, what on earth is he calling me for?
Yeah.
And he asked me a couple questions. I'm not really sure what was going on like from your end, but like one of the questions he was asking was like, if money didn't matter, what would you do right now?
I remember that.
And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, if money, like, probably work with the youth. And just like honest, innocent, just like
Yeah.
whatever. And at the time, I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I kind of dismissed it because like I was in the middle of like, I think I was either at Wake or I had just started in
Yeah.
public accounting, like in the thick of my professional career. And then fast forward, like probably 2 or 3 summers later, like we worked with the youth, right? This past summer. No, that was that 5 years ago? 5 years ago, like I was the full-time youth leader for the summer.
Right.
And man, that was a powerful summer where I was transitioning from grad school before working at KPMG. And we were studying the book of James, and like the main thing we hit on that really resonated with me. It's crazy, like when you're teaching through a book, it's almost convicting you more
Way
than
more.
anything else.
You learn more teaching.
Yeah,
you
you're
feel more teaching.
It's more so
1000%.
like God. I'm studying this. God's convicting me. What am I learning? And then you just like pass that on, right?
Yeah.
It's like this is what I'm dealing with.
yeah.
And at that time in James, like the main thing we were hitting on was that like if you proclaim to have faith, like if you have faith, right? Are you acting on that? Like genuine faith acts, right?
Yep.
Authentic faith
True
comes
belief,
to life
right.
through
True
your
belief
actions.
in God comes out
Yeah.
in fruit.
And that's what I was convicted about because like my entire life I proclaim I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian. But like where are the fruits of my faith, right? Am I acting that out? And like in the midst of that, I'm acting as a youth pastor. So for like that was, they kind of worked hand in hand. But then after that summer, I went back, worked public accounting, you guys know, for 2 years. And really at the end of that summer, like I had peace knowing that like, I've put all this time and effort into grad school, getting my CPA license. Like, this is what I need to be doing.
It was hard work. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like, I invested all this time and effort. I'm like, okay, I need to go become a CPA. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you can still have a professional job and still, you know, dedicate your life to serving Jesus.
And
Right.
that's where
You-
after
You don't have to be like a youth pastor
100%.
or
I
a
wanna-
missionary.
I want
right.
Kirk to kind of, after you tell your story,
Well,
I
go
want
you can
Kirk
go ahead and
to
talk about that.
Well, I want Kirk to say, because Kirk doesn't, he's not the youth pastor. He doesn't get paid, but he's been pouring into the youth
Bro,
for
my man
5
Kirk is
years.
as steady as can
And
be.
Kirk's, say it.
Every youth group in the world
Yes.
that works because there's Kirklands.
Yeah.
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 That's the way
So,
they work.
and I want you to kind of share about, because just, I almost don't like the phrase when people say call to ministry.
Yeah.
I know that for you guys, you had a distinct moment where you're called to ministry, but like Kirk, you're in ministry right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had a call to ministry. You've not had a call to like go be a pastor, but
But
like,
you know, like when
you're
you put it as
still
simple as possible, we're all called to ministry.
100%.
Oh yeah.
Right? Maybe not professionally like my
Yeah.
job title,
Right.
but still, like, we are still a witness to
But I
everyone
want to
coming
hear
in
why
contact
Kirk.
with.
I want to hear why Kirk. Why do you do what you do? Like, why do you?
It's a great question. I mean, everything that I go back to is like I'm just willing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a willing heart. I remember, so we met with Pastor Josh. I'll never forget. Like, we met with Josh for like an hour.
Let me give the context. So that, like, me working summer, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
This past summer, right? Josh came to us. RC has just gone to the mission field. There's a vacancy in the youth. No one's there
Yeah.
to lead. So Josh comes to talk to
A
us.
few weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
Just kind of filling in.
More
He-
than a few
Yeah.
weeks.
No,
I
no,
mean, you've been
right
helping
after
for-
RC left.
Oh, okay,
But there's
yeah,
no
yeah.
full time,
I see what
and
you're
they
saying.
need some kind of like temporary solution.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And so we met with Pastor Josh. Was like, hey, can you meet? Me and Jay were like, he's gonna ask us to like
Yeah, we
take over
knew.
the youth.
We
Yeah.
knew going into it.
And so we were like, I mean, I was like, I'm willing to do it. And Jay Walk was like, I just don't want this to be long term, like 100%. And we were there.
I didn't want to do it. Like, I did
course.
not at
Yeah.
all.
Yes.
We were meeting with him though, and like that was the conversation the whole time. Is he was like, well, will you guys do it? And I'm there just like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna do it. And then
Yeah.
Jay
You're a
Walk's
willing
like,
heart,
I'll
bro.
do it, but I don't want it to be long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I kind of felt the same way because obviously, like I know.
Well, you had KJ on the way too. This was
I
a
did.
couple
It's
months
kind of
before
an
KJ
area
was
of
born.
unknown,
Right.
for me, and I was like, I don't know how much I'm going to be needed at the house. Like, I don't know how this
Yeah.
is all going to work out. There was just a lot of unknown at that time. But anyways, too, like one really big thing I think that again, this is where I don't really know like how God's always working, but I didn't want it to be long term either. But like I knew that there was going to be a solution at some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
God's gonna
Like,
provide.
yeah, being faithful in that because
Yeah.
I know that's not my gift.
Yeah.
Like a thing that I struggle with is connecting with the kids.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
even like with RC, man, they connected with him like immediately. Like
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
with Jay Walk, like
Yeah, they do.
and so like I knew it wasn't my gift, but I was like,
Time out.
I'm here,
Time out.
I'm
Time
gonna
out.
be
Time out.
willing
Time
to
out.
do
Time
it.
out.
And I don't want to downplay that.
Jacob's
Kirk.
gonna
that's-
shoot this
whoa, whoa,
down.
that-
Yeah,
don't be saying that ain't your
shoot
gift,
it
man.
Yeah, you are gifted very
Yeah.
much in
Yeah.
that.
no.
I know what you're saying. Like
Shoot
Jacob-
affirmation
yeah.
bullets back at him.
Yeah,
Kirkland,
we-
listen, you're actually good at this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
dude.
you're really,
Dadgummit,
really,
Kirkland.
KB, you were the
really
man.
good at it.
You are
Yeah.
the
Like-
man, Kirkland.
Do
And like
not
you
sell
said-
yourself short.
like
I
you
understand,
said.
like,
Yeah.
don't want to like gloat or like be too like pompous about yourself, but dude,
You're good at it.
yeah,
100%.
that's the end. What?
That's a joke.
Yes, of course.
So that was this past summer,
Yeah.
and like context, right before that call, I had just changed over to working at Haynes Brands in IT, completely new job, like new role. My manager just quit. I just got not like a promotion, but I was like in charge of like a small development team of like 5 or 6 people. I'm like stressed to the max.
Yeah.
Right. I got no idea what's going on. And I'm just like, yo, I don't want this other thing on my plate. Like I'm not sleeping that good at night because I'm freaking out about this job. I don't know what I'm doing. Like I had no clue. They shouldn't have hired me. Like if we're being honest.
I
Right.
wouldn't say that, bro.
I'm
I know
dead
what you're
serious.
saying,
But like, so I'm like, I don't want to take this on too. But me and Kirk were like, okay, we'll do it.
We
and
gave him
so-
a deadline too.
Yeah, we said,
him a
I can't
deadline.
remember what we said. We said like 3 or 4 months.
It was till KJ
It was till KJ
born.
was born.
Yeah.
Dang,
it's how
you guys
long
threw the boundary line.
Yeah.
It's
How
like,
long
listen,
you gonna
we're
do it
in
for?
for
Deadline was out the window for long. So like we get into it, and me and Kirk are talking like, what are we going to study about? And we had a couple things. We're like, well, maybe this or that. Like, what do we want to like plan out the next couple of weeks of like lesson plan? And we came back to the Book of Daniel because when we were in the youth, I think it was it Pastor Josh or John Owens, someone led a series on the book of Daniel at summer camp.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that, because I think, at least in my mind when I was younger, like you really connect well with these stories from the Old Testament, where it's like, you know, really like graphic, like, oh yeah, Daniel experienced this. This is how he reacted. What can we learn?
It's
from
hard
that?
to understand when Paul says to live is Christ and to die is gain.
Yeah,
but when you hear about Daniel or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego living in a fire, for like it just burns in your head.
I think it's easier to connect and resonate, especially like for me.
It's
when
still
I was
hard
younger.
for me to understand when Paul says stuff. Maybe y'all
100%.
probably get it better than I do.
No.
Probably not.
Huh?
Said read Philemon.
I know.
Philemon.
So I loved Daniel, and it was so cool studying that in like the entire time. So you have the book of James. We're talking about, all right, true faith comes to life through your actions, and then through Daniel, the thing that kept hitting me like week in, week out was from Romans 12, and that's kind of why the Romans 12 kind of became a thing.
R12 nation.
R12 podcast.
Right? But it was like talking about being a living sacrifice.
Yes.
And like, I'm telling you, like, I was literally thinking about that for weeks and months, like the entire time. Like, am I a living sacrifice? Am I a living sacrifice? Am I genuinely giving up myself, my own desires, what I want to serve God?
Yep.
Right. And that comes to like differently in everybody's life. Like in Kirk's instance, like maybe not being a youth leader, but he's involved day in, day out, like for years. He's there, right, for the kids and fills in like right now, right, with the baby here. Like you're teaching for a couple of weeks, like awesome, right? And so like the living sacrifice thing is just like I'm struggling with that. I'm like thinking like, am I actually a living sacrifice? And I remember one Wednesday night at church, like we usually have like a quick like 30-minute devotion. Pastor Josh leads. And I hadn't been on a Wednesday night in like probably 3 or 4 weeks. Again, I'm just like swamped with work. And for whatever reason, Bree and I, we went that Wednesday night, and it was about, what's his name? Homeboy that runs away from Nineveh. Jonah.
Come on, man.
And it's talking about Jonah. And right,
You just refer to him as homeboy.
God is calling Jonah, and he runs away. Right, I'm sitting here thinking, like, once he talked about Jonah, I just almost like break down. I'm like,
yes.
Am I running from this? Because in the back of my mind, like,
dude,
when God's calling,
after youth camp.
yeah, it was a couple weeks after youth camp. And like when God's calling you to
my
do
youth
something.
pastor, well, when I say listen, one of the youth pastors on my team's calling me right now. You know what I'm going to do? Ignore it.
Colton. Hey, Colton, I'm sorry, bro.
Hey, you hit the right one.
Colton, if you see this, I'm sorry,
But
bro.
we're talking about a call to ministry, like to youth ministry, and he calls. That's nuts.
cool.
He's calling about ministry.
That is
dude,
crazy,
it's crazy what's happening.
But then, did you like pray about it anymore? Like after
So
you heard that sermon, or
I
you
had
just-
been like wrestling with it with myself up until that night. But I remember that Wednesday night, like as soon as he said Jonah, like that's all I needed to hear. It's like, man, like it could
It's
not
just
be
an
more
affirmation.
obvious.
It's an affirmation,
Right, like,
it's-
I immediately I'm thinking like, am I running from this? And like we're talking to Jonah the entire time. I'm like fighting back emotion because I know this is God speaking to me. Like I hadn't been on a Wednesday night in a month. I just happened to come. Like it could not be more obvious. Right, in the back of our minds, I feel like we always know when God's calling you to something, but you're always like resistant, hesitant.
Yeah.
And after that, I talked to Josh, and I'm just like, man, like it's obvious, like
Yeah.
And I mean that's kind of how it happened. But man, it's
Do you have any like? Well, I want you to tell us what your role is, because you have a very cool job. I know you're a pastor, but like, tell us what that entails for you at Bayside and what all you do.
yeah, like day to day kind of stuff.
Day to day, nothing. Just golf and
How was the
literally
golf
nothing.
game?
Terrible. I don't golf. Like baseball players, like you just swing and the
You
ball
just hit
goes
as far as possible.
You
Yeah,
never
and
know
then
which direction's going.
turns. I love that when people ask me, like some kid at church will walk up to me and go, "So, Pastor Brannon, what do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm a pastor," and he goes, "Yeah, but I'm talking about like your real job." I'm like, "Thanks." But that's like the thing.
I
No.
get the same question, bro.
Dude,
I get
yeah.
the same question.
What do you no? What do you do for your real job? Thank you for validating my position in the community. But my role has been for the last 3 years. So I'll explain this term. It's been global teaching pastor, and global, not like global in the world, global in our model. So our churches, we've got churches in 7 different cities.
Yeah.
And my role has basically been to help create a lot of our global content. I preach somewhere else every weekend. And then a lot of the teaching of like Celebrate Recovery is our recovery program. I'll do some stuff in the youth, all conferences. So my role at Bayside has been primarily teaching.
Yeah.
Which for me has been awesome when it comes to the teaching piece, but that's not my favorite thing in ministry. So that's actually been quite difficult.
Right.
I am so much more like I want my boys to get saved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So put me in the cut.
Well,
put
dude,
me in the-
you're a people person, man. Like
Yeah,
you connect with anybody.
I
I
Conversation.
don't
drink people.
I don't
Yeah.
care what room you walk into and who's there.
Yeah.
You can have a conversation.
I just remember like at
Yeah.
Calvary, like your sophomore year, my freshman year, we walk into Calvary, and I knew you.
Yep.
I didn't know nobody else. And I'm
Yep.
telling you, like within a week,
You knew
my man
everybody.
Brandon's homeboy, like friends with everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
Including Jonah,
Like-
who was one of the homeboys.
Yeah, he was one of the
He
homeboys.
was one of the homeboys.
But that is just a testament to you, the way
Yeah,
God made you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I say this all the time. Me and you have actually talked about this before. That my concept of ministry, at least from the teaching perspective, is that sermons are randomly transformational. Randomly, somebody will get hit by a message that changes a concept, and then they will go and actually practice a way of relating to God that they did not before.
Right.
Randomly transformational. When relationships are regularly transformative.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's hard for me in that role, yet it's such a great privilege. But I get to be in the part that's randomly transforming. Now,
Yeah.
it's so important, like, we get to, like, disciple from the corporate
Right.
perspective in that. So important. But if you told me I could preach this weekend, or I could have 20 people over at our house in our backyard around that fire
That's
pit,
what we're doing.
Yeah.
then I would do the other one.
You know what's crazy?
I really would. I would do the other thing.
You know what's crazy is like I think somebody mentioned this a couple weeks ago. It might have even been Josh on a Sunday morning. He said something like, instead of inviting people to church, you need to take church to them, man.
Yeah, dude.
Like you need to go into their life. And I think that I'm starting to realize that more, that when I just say, hey, you should come to church, it's just a cop out.
Yeah.
It's just me trying to shy away from sharing my faith with this person.
Yeah.
And I say, come listen to my pastor talk about Jesus and his faith, instead of me saying, this is how Jesus has changed my life in the real world and not just in church. I think that's
a good point.
It's
Well, that's why your testament is the most powerful like way to connect with somebody. Like people
Most
want
powerful tool.
people want to personally connect with you. You know, like
Yeah.
they want to hear like how God is changing your life. Right? They
And
want
as
to.
a-
They want you to be authentic. They don't want this like facade or like just to sit at church.
and
you
as
know?
a person, like a completely lost person, you take them in the church, and I know that God can speak
Yeah.
whenever he wants to speak.
100%.
I'm not trying to put him in a box, but if you read something like very deep, like in First John, to a lost soul in church, it's hard for them to understand that.
Yeah.
You know
in
what
the
I'm saying?
beginning was
It's
the
hard-
word.
It's hard for me to understand
1.
that. Like
Yeah.
I have trouble understanding. Imagine somebody that didn't grow up with the background that we grew up in. So I
Dude.
think it's
There's this both andness that's like a really fun place to wrestle with intention in like the way we practice. I like what Jacob said earlier. Sometimes people come up to me and say, when do you feel called into ministry? And I'll be
Yeah.
like, well, when did you?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that-
Everybody
it's
is.
not me. There's a like Jacob said, there's a vocational aspect to like
Yeah.
God has placed in me from a burden perspective.
Uh-huh.
But there's like you got Jesus saying, come and see. Like that's how he calls the disciples, which I think is like a good tip for our churches. That Jesus' like entry barrier is come and see,
Yeah,
not come and profess, not come and doesn't say take up your cross.
yeah.
He says come and see.
Come and watch me.
He's going to take them on a journey to where he says take up the cross.
Yeah.
So that's like the discipleship process is like, again, if
I'm
somebody
glad you added that, because I was like, wait, he does say take him his cross.
Yeah.
But
No, he
you're right. He
does.
takes you
Not
on a
he
initially.
takes
journey.
them on this beautiful journey
Right.
from come and see to come and die to
That's
yourself.
perfect.
Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it starts at come and see, and often, like, and I'm not saying it's just as a like a diss, but I think culturally, a lot of times, church wise, we flip those orders. Like, there's the come and die to yourself,
Yeah.
Give up
accept,
everything.
yeah, and pass the theology test.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you've got that stuff down,
Right.
and then you can come see like all the things we got going on here.
Yeah.
And you
It's
can be
flipped.
involved at deeper levels. And I think it's the both andness. Like there's the come and see, and then there's got to be these calls to deeper discipleship and come and die.
Yeah.
But then you've got that come and see, and then Jesus gives them the Great Commission, which is like the for a
Go and tell.
go and
Yeah.
tell, like go and be. So there's this
Right.
come and see, go and be both. Like there's a lot of times that a come and see what God's doing in this place
Right.
is a beautiful thing. There's like something powerful about God inhabiting the praises of his people that you experience in church that is like this beautiful, interesting thing.
Yeah.
Like I've seen churches underground in Iraq and Lebanon and these places where the persecuted church has risen.
Right.
But there's something beautiful about being in that place where these people are coming into this space, not because the building is like sacred, but it's because it's where they seek to find God.
Yeah.
And they can be with others. And then there's now you go out in the world and be like declarative of like what God's done in you.
Yeah.
So there's this both andness that has to exist in that.
And I love that come and see, because when he says that, the only thing you got to do is look for him.
Mm-hmm.
He does everything. Jesus does everything.
Yeah.
We just got to look to him. Like, it's so clear when you say it like that.
We cliche that like I'll make you fishers of men thing. And like we look at that from like people that have the whole New Testament.
Right.
And like don't just strip that down to the bare tenderness of Jesus that he's speaking. I'm not saying they fully understand it, but he's speaking in language that they can get.
Right.
Like he's talking to fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow these things are going to relate. You were going to tenderly call these people to come and see. And whatever they're coming and seeing, it'll be something like what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Just in a way that you've not seen it done.
Are you allowed to tell us about your new job? Not your new job, but the job that you just took over. If not, it's
corporate accounting. I've become a CPA for Hanes Brands. That's my newest move forward.
That's a little loud.
Yeah. So like I have been on that kind of teaching circuit for a minute, and I'm now going to go just to one church and pastor that church. Nice. So, and it's in Folsom, California, which is awesome. Nobody in the East Coast knows where Folsom is outside of like Johnny,
song, like Folsom County
except
Blues?
of Johnny Cash, who did Live from Folsom Prison.
That's it.
And we actually have a church in Folsom Prison. Nice. So, and I'm talking about like 300 people coming.
That is cool. That's awesome.
But listen, when you walk through the yard of the prison, if you're going to go teach there, when you're walking through the yard to get to the chapel, you have to sign a document that says that if you are taken hostage, they will not negotiate for your life.
Oh, my gosh.
So you're walking through this yard of, like, cats have been in surfing hard time. And it's like, you've got guards with you, but if 400 of these dudes come, those two come, I mean, what are we going to do? Yeah. And if they take me hostage, they're not going to negotiate for my life. So it's never back on R12.
Wait.
So are you going to be preaching every Sunday, or what's that going to look like?
We've tried to build this thing where we rotate teachers. So our heart in that has been that, like, often churches, at least in the Western context, are personality-driven places. Not that God's not working.
Right.
But I've even, like, some of you may have heard this growing up around in our area. There was like conversations like, oh, well, that's Jeremy Walker's church if he's the pastor.
Right.
Or that's Brannon Shortt's church. That's Jacob Walker. That's Kirkland Bowles' church. Mm-hmm. And we have been very intentional to create a team so that we rotate. So what I'll try to do here is I'll try to preach twice a month at our church. I will take one weekend, and we'll co-do it. Like, we'll have other pastors within our network come in and preach a weekend, or Brian Hopkins, who's also at Folsom, preach weekends. And so I'll try to do two in our local context, and then one Ray, the founding pastors, asked me to keep within our global network of churches. So I'll preach 3 weekends a month. But I would love to preach 2 weekends a month.
I think it's really cool how you connect with so many different people that way, right? You you're able to physically,
and that's what you're so good at.
And you're not that it's bad to be stuck with one congregation, but like you're able to, talk with, experience, like be a presence there with so many different people.
Too, it's just more about the church than the preacher. Like, that's the aspect I like about it.
100%.
What you were just saying of like, oh, that's
is that challenging though? Because at least like the context I'm looking at it from is like a pastor's, okay, we're going to work through the book of Romans, right?
Yes.
The next 16 weeks we're doing Romans chapter 1, 2, and 3. But like for you, it's like, okay, I'm here. How do you try to get continuity or like planning out sermons, or like how does that work?
So we just taught through Romans over 16 weeks. So it's funny you say that.
Really?
No, we literally just finished.
Wow.
Do it. Nail one.
No, man. It's the yellow one. It's the yellow one.
I like that.
There
and now a word from our sponsors, Frankie's Coffee.
That's what
awesome.
I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Did y'all really? Did you really?
No, really. We just ended and did our Advent series. So we just finished that. What we do is we will bring in all the people that communicate, even if they communicate once a year. Mm-hmm. But we'll bring in all our people who communicate every single Wednesday and prep together.
Okay. That's cool. Awesome.
So all of our different churches will be sitting there and we'll say, all right, Romans 12. And then we'll read it. We'll sit there and pray. And we'll say, what is the Spirit birthing in this?
Wow.
We'll come up with a congruent outline. That's why I say when we talk about global content, we'll come up with a congruent outline, at least of the have to take away points in this.
Yeah.
And then everybody will preach their own
the personal kind of
sermon
stuff
around
it.
But you have a plan.
But we build what we call the guts.
Uh-huh.
We collectively build the guts.
Dude, I love that.
That is
That
pretty
way,
cool.
like the entire community together, like feels like
And there's
the
accountability.
connectedness.
Yeah, so you're
there's-
teaching the
there's-
same thing though, like across the week, across the board, or
Yeah, well, like if I'm in Bayside Folsom and somebody's at Bayside Santa Rosa, somebody's at Bayside Granite Bay,
yeah,
all of those are going to be in Romans 3.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
And we're at least going to hit the same guts.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
it. And then
then
you
Personalize
preach how
it.
God's
Yeah.
talking to you.
Yeah, and I'll use different cross references. I'll be another Old Testament
Yeah.
passages
That's
to
cool,
bring
man.
this back. But it's cool because it's all our youth pastors. It's all our middle school pastors.
That's
It's our
awesome.
senior pastors. It's the executives. But that room is an open room.
Yeah.
So I'll tell our interns, get in here.
That's where you,
Yeah.
dude. That,
Rip it up
Mhm.
with us. Rip the text apart with us. And tell me stories of your. There's been so many times I've been on stage and been like, so when we were prepping this message as a team this week,
Yeah.
one of our interns said these words to me. And then I get to say that to
That's so cool.
X amount of people. But we built it to be truly, genuinely, sincerely collaborative.
Yeah.
And that's
Pretty
why I
cool.
say it's a team.
It's
Yeah.
a
Because
team.
That's
when
what's
you
so
texted
cool,
me, you
man.
texted me and said my team, I didn't understand.
yeah.
And I know that like
It's a
Jacob's
different
gonna have
concept.
a team at Green Meadows. Like you have
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Josh, Pastor James, Melissa, you, everybody's gonna be a team, but it's a different concept.
Just
It's
imagine
cool.
studying around a dozen people who've been in the ministry for 5 years, 20 years, 30 years,
Hey, I want you
all
to,
different kinds of background. You know,
I want you to tell
man,
that
that's
story
powerful.
about what my mom said about Jacob being in the ministry like a long time ago, and then you having a conversation with him where I think it was like the night I got drafted, or around then.
What did mom say?
Do you remember Jacob or you having a conversation with him about him going in the ministry one
Is
day?
this the empathy conversation?
I don't know. I mean, you don't have to say all that.
Okay.
I just want you to point at the fact that like before he made the decision to go into the ministry, or like God called him in the ministry, didn't you have a conversation with him like a long time ago about, or maybe he's talking about the phone
No, he's
call.
talking
The
about the
phone
phone
call,
call.
yeah.
Oh,
Because
that was it.
what is so cool about that night is when I FaceTime him, he's in this tiki hut in like Central America. There's like neon light everywhere, but he is laying in bed, and it's nuts. It's like there's smoke. I mean, I don't know what was going on, but like
Fog machine.
there he was in
Strobe lights.
in glory, and he did. He just so sincerely goes, you know what? If I could do anything, I'd be a youth pastor.
Yeah.
And I just remember I talked to Jeremy about that this summer. I talked to your mom about it after. Like I'm blown away that God has somehow worked
Yeah.
all of that back
Yeah.
to this. Because I remember, you guys know this, I remember going to school with Jacob and thinking, dang, Jacob is a genius.
What a nerd.
oh yeah,
Jacob is a genius. He's going to end up with this other girl we go to school with. He ended up marrying Bree instead, had a baby, all this stuff. It's great. But, like, we're like, Jacob will maybe be president of the United States. Maybe he becomes, like, a UN ambassador. Maybe he
Yeah.
becomes, like, a big oil tycoon. And I just love that, like, in all of that, like, I don't respect anybody in the world more than youth pastors and children's pastors. I was talking to Kirkland about this. It's the hardest job in the
Yeah.
world. Because I get to teach to adults that have abstract thinking skills and critical thought. And I can hold a open-ended question that's controversial, hold different sides of it, and
They'll
say,
have a-
you wrestle in the tension.
Yeah.
And then you guys are going through Daniel with a bunch of teenagers talking about the prophetic literature on the back end of Daniel. You guys are unreal.
Oh, whoa,
I
whoa.
agree.
Let's back up. We didn't get to the prophecy
didn't go
part.
there.
oh yeah, yeah.
we
we
I was like,
stopped.
y'all
Y'all told the
went through
story.
Daniel
We
with
didn't get that
teenage
far.
kids,
They told the
man.
Daniel story. Yeah.
we
But
kept
Still,
to the
either
front
way,
half.
I do know what you're saying.
You have
Like,
to age grade teach. You have to be able to make eternal truths make sense. And it's not that, I mean, teenagers are infinitely more capable than society gives them credit for.
Yeah.
And yet there's still like a neurological cognitive development thing that's happening in everybody.
Yeah.
So if somebody can have a kid in children's ministry and teach them that God is warm
Yeah.
and safe and kind and compassionate, anybody that can teach that to a 6-year-old, I got to tell this story. Is it okay if I tell a story? Am I allowed to tell stories?
Yeah,
stories
is-
aren't allowed here.
Is it about you?
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
little girl runs up to me one day after service. This little girl's in the foster care system and has gone from foster home to foster home to foster home. But like 6 or 7 of them have been abusive homes. And then she lands with this beautiful couple in our church. And she's popping around. She's like 9 years old and has experienced more trauma than most people experience in a life.
Yeah.
And she runs up to me, Pastor Brandon, I got to tell you something. And she's in an Elsa dress. Dang it. So she's in an Elsa dress, and I get down on her level, like, to make eye contact. I'm down on my knee. I was like, yeah, tell me, what is it? And she goes, today I trusted Jesus. And I said, that's amazing. And I said, but if you don't mind me asking, like, what was it about Jesus that made you want to trust him?
Yeah.
And she looks at me and she goes, my Sunday school teacher taught me that God is gentle.
Gentle and lowly.
And like there's this moment that she has in her little 9-year-old mind where though the world has not been kind or gentle with her, God is. And the fact that that Sunday school volunteer teacher could communicate in a way that was faithful, that not only explained who Jesus was, death on the cross, resurrection, that she could be made new, but the fact that he was safe, that was it for her.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that I would conceptually be able to say that in the same way because I'm so used to speaking to 42-year-old people that don't think they need Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's just so, whether it be student ministry, kids, youth, I think those are the hardest jobs in the world.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and I think like so much of my life changed. Like faith became real. Like when we were like late high school, going on mission trips, and like certain people in your life who like you really connect with, and like being a follower of Christ is much more than just coming to church on Sunday, praying and reading your Bible. Like you need to live it out. And like, man,
he
like,
is who you
like,
are.
Kind of
like,
going,
like you are him.
Yeah,
he
and
is
like
you. Yeah.
going back to like when I kind of like it became real, like I want to be a youth pastor, and you talk about like how bad you want like your friends, your boys to like know Christ.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like I want so bad for every kid that comes to church for youth to know Christ and to live that out, man.
Yeah.
Like to change their life to where that is all that matters,
Yeah,
right? And like
100%.
for the longest time, like high school, college, grad school, CPA, KPMG, like you're pursuing a career, like making more money, like getting all this stuff.
Yeah.
And like
For what?
yeah, and like that's part of like this past summer, and I'm like driving to work and just thinking like, why does that even matter? You know, like cool, make $1 million, donate it, build a building at a college,
You
get
made
your name
$1
on
million
it.
this summer
No,
and left
like
that
long
job.
term, like right, like so many people like man, make all this money.
Are
It's
you
like,
out of your mind?
bro, that doesn't matter at all,
Right.
You know, and like I want to like allow Christ to use me to where through me he can change people's lives.
Yes. Yeah.
Like for eternity.
Yes.
You know, we got like 80, 85 years and you're done.
Have you
right?
guys ever thought that like if we live to be 90, which statistically we won't, hopefully you guys do, but statistically we're going to live to be 77. So in America today, a lot of our life is over.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But, like
Prime.
Yeah.
if you're breaking it into threes and we got 90,
We're
a third,
past the
that
first.
third of that block is gone.
Well, and like
true,
I've
true.
told some people about it and they're like, oh, so like you getting a pay raise? You like, how's your pay going to be? I'm like, that doesn't matter in the slightest.
Yeah, but that's just the
Like,
worldly view.
I know. And
But
it's
Green
like,
Meadows did actually match the $1 million he made
like
last
people
summer.
are like, it's just like, it's so, I don't know. It just like grieves your heart as to like how focused we are around money and material stuff. And it's like, man, like that's fleeting, you know?
Well, and
It's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's good.
Going off that, it's like how much time have we spent doing, just like you said, stuff that doesn't matter eternally.
Yeah.
Like just wasted time doing stuff that like isn't impacting somebody else in some way, like isn't showing Jesus through you. That's what hits me is when I look back through my week and I say like, dude, I just spent 5 hours doing nothing. Just wasted. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever you're trying to do.
Social
that's-
media episode 3.
Yeah, social
Right
media is
now.
a big one. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm so excited about too, because it's like Monday through Monday, every day of the week, like my 100% focus is on pouring into these kids,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? Whatever that means, like going to lunch with them, seeing them at school, going to a game, meeting up with someone who's struggling with something at night,
Right.
right?
I'm
Calling
glad.
someone
I'm
on
glad
the
you.
phone.
I'm
Like,
glad you said like
that's what it's about.
Because I want you to be. You're so good at what you do. I want you to be open for these kids.
Yeah.
Like I want them to know, like I can call Jacob and like
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
there for me because
Yeah.
I feel like we had that when we were growing up, but like it was just different. Like I didn't feel like I could connect. You can connect with these kids. Same with Kirk. Kirk has it like he'll be a little bit more busy than you are. I mean you're busy, but I want you to connect with these kids, man.
I mean,
Like,
that'll be your purpose.
Be there, yeah,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah,
you're
that's
gonna
what I'm
love
so
that.
excited about,
Yeah,
man.
it's gonna be awesome to watch.
I'm thrilled for
Just
you.
see how, yeah. I want to end this little segment, and then we're gonna move on. Is there any advice that you would give Jaywalk and Kirk being in the ministry? Is there anything that you would say that like going into it you thought it was gonna be one way and it wasn't, or
Yeah.
some of the struggles that you've had to deal with and kind of like have God pull you through it, like anything like that?
Yeah, I think life change is slow.
Yeah.
And that can be discouraging in ministry, especially with the age group y'all are working in. Like me and Jeremy were talking about this. I was in it. Well, again, I don't know what examples I can share, but like I've had people like teaching at a youth group yell out obscene explicits to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. But yeah.
Look at him. I'm like mid sermon, and this kid's looking at me and goes, "Blank, did you blank and blank?" I'm like, dude, this is it.
It's like, but that's what you're getting from this? Yeah.
Well, and so often, like, you can feel like it's hitting nothing. And I think what I thought growing into ministry was that the teaching was the thing. Like, if we could just teach these cats the word, they would get it, they'd ingest it, it'd go in through their ears, sink down to their heart, change the way their hands and feet move, and we're going to go there. And then I found out very quickly that they did not care nearly as much as about teaching as I thought. Like,
I didn't want to learn.
I told Jeremy one time, I had a guy come up to me and go, "Brannon, you preached the best sermon I've heard in my life 3 weeks ago." And I was being a punk. This still got some rough edges. So I looked at him and said, what was it about?
Oh, gosh.
I said, "Thanks for saying that, yo, but what was it about?"
Jesus.
He freezes and goes, and then he looks at me and goes, "Well, it was good." And I'm like, "Yeah, you don't remember a thing I said. Like, nobody cares."
Deer in the headlights, bro.
Yeah, dude. But I think that's what I thought it was about. And that's what I missed. I would say that the biggest gap in like broader Western evangelicalism is there's this non-understanding of it's what we call worldviewism. That we're teaching a worldview and not how to abide in Christ.
Yeah.
Like, there's this way you can conceptualize things. There's this way you can view the world. There's this lens, and it'll be a cute little worldview. It just won't be a relationship. And I think if I am starting over today and continuing to do what I'm doing, I'm teaching all the spiritual formation, what it looks like to pray.
Yeah.
That prayer is a place to be honest, not good.
Yeah.
That God can hear everything He already knows.
Yeah.
I'd be talking about silence. I'd be talking about solitude. I'd be talking about confession. I'd be conceptualizing the fact that, like, God knows the way you have sinned and how you're going to sin until you die.
Yeah.
I'd teach the gentle and lowly stuff. I heard you mention that earlier. Great book, favorite book I read last year. I would teach that. I would teach the compassion stuff. That, like, when God shares His name in Exodus, He literally says, "Yahweh, Yahweh, the compassionate one." That when He's explaining the essence of His name, He's going to talk about not letting the guilty go unpunished. He's going to talk about all these things, but God uses His own words to start with, first and foremost, compassion.
Yep.
Maintaining love to thousands of generations, forgiving the wicked.
Yeah.
Like, God's going to describe Himself as compassionate. So what I would give any advice on anybody is teach people how to abide and relate to God. And that's not heresy alert. Your primary identity is not a disciple. Yeah. Heresy alert. John 1, right? All who believed in the name were given the right to become children.
Yeah.
Children. Hebrews. He who makes all people perfect is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. That Jesus relates in this way. He teaches us to pray Father. And if we're safe in our identity as children, then all the other biblical things we are called to do. Disciple, which in Greek means pupil, peer, adherent of a way. Yes, we disciple. Yes, we're peacemakers. Yes, we're reconcilers, all because we're safe as kids.
Grow into it.
Yeah. Child first, everything else
Your
falls into
child
place.
first. Everything else derives and overflows from the safety that you're God's kid. Somebody walked up to me once and goes, "Brannon, but the Great Commission says go and make disciples." I'm like, of course it does, because that's the only thing you can make. You can't make children of God.
Yeah, true.
God makes children of God.
Yeah.
God draws men to Himself. You were then called to go make disciples, teach the way, teaching them to obey, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Yeah, I would say, how do you relate to God tactfully day to day?
Yeah.
Understanding that you are a kid before you're anything.
Right.